Next, we have Mike MacFerrin. And Mike is going to talk to us about how the polar qualification system needs fixing, and looking forward to this.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm very nervous.
You're going to do great.
So for those that don't know, for any field work in the Antarctic program, U.S. Antarctic program specifically, and polar field work in NSF funded polar field work in the Arctic regions, you need to pass a mandatory set of physical qualifying exams. This is a whole long list of tests and all sorts of things you got to go through. Everybody dreads it. It's not without reason. It's good to know if you've got an abscessing tooth before spending 2 months in the deep field. It's good to be screened for cancer. These aren't without reason, but there's problems. And I'm going to try and rip a Band-Aid off here. So a bit of an introduction of me. I'm a research scientist at the University of Colorado. I have spent a couple of decades of my life in the deep field, including about 10 years working on the ice sheets, doing ice sheet hydrology work. And about 2 years ago, I was going to the field, navigating the PQ process, and had a really horrible experience, eventually resulting in the termination of my employment very suddenly, and being kicked off right before, while I was in NSF managed quarantine. I have since then reached out and talked to a lot of people who have had issues with the PQ program. Some of them, you can read it here. Some passed, some didn't. Some have been barred permanently. This especially applies to contractors. And a number were mistreated and abused. The demographics of who I've spoken with, rough demographics, and this is not a scientific survey, I just want to make clear, but of people that have spoken with me, more than 70% have been women, even though these are rough numbers. In the U.S. Antarctic program, women make up about a third of the program. And more than 30% of the people who have spoken with me have been non-white. These are both overrepresentations of what's in the community. So I do not know if these stats hold for the entire PQ program. I don't have those numbers. The NSF has those numbers. They aren't published. The most common problems. The second most common problem I've actually heard about, and I was very surprised when I first started hearing about this, but people getting abusive, threatening, or aggressive personal messages, voicemails, and the like from the PQ chief doctor on their voicemail saying that they're unstable, they shouldn't be going, things like that. The single most common complaint, and this is a pretty common one, is people being NPQ'd for just some really ridiculous reasons. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm a doctor, but not the useful kind. And so I'm not qualified to say on a case-by-case basis what does and doesn't make sense. But some of these, you hear these stories, and you're just like, wait, what? What are you kidding me? Some people are NPQ'd with no reason given. They will not be told why. This is especially prevalent with psych exams. If you're overwintering, you need to pass a psychological test. Often being told no for reasons that don't actually line up with the medical screening guidelines. And this, when I say USAP, it's specifically U.S. Antarctic program, but it applies to polar programs in general. Sometimes this was used on me, that they cite rules that aren't actually rules if you read the fine print. Lack of medical confidentiality, having your status with a disability or otherwise broadcast to large groups of people that have no need to know. People without medical qualifications participating in making medical decisions happens a lot. I've heard about it. And no voice for applicants. I say patients here, it's not really the right word, but applicants that in the application process or the appeal, there is nowhere on the PQ form, nor if you get NPQ'd on the appeal form, for you to state your case, to say what they got wrong. The entire appeal form is you check initial next to 9 boxes statement saying you understand this, you understand that, you sign it, get a notary, sign it, you fax it in. That's it. You do not get to say what they got wrong. And rules and tests that seem to, and I'm going to stress the word seem to, favor men over women and US-born applicants over non-US born. I have examples of these. I am purposely not going into some of these examples. I'm being very careful today to not out anybody. So I'm going to go to some quotes used with permissions. We were in a room where others stood nearby. He told me I shouldn't be there. He excoriated me with stereotypes about my disability. I tried to argue, but eventually shut up. He continued scolding me for several minutes while others looked on. He said if I didn't change the way I was doing something, I'd never PQ again. That something he's talking about had nothing to do with their medical status, by the way. I want you to think for a second about the ethics of a doctor saying that. He permanently barred me from the U.S. Antarctic program, threatened the NSF would sue if I tried to fight it. This is someone who is not an employee of the National Science Foundation. Everyone's afraid of Dr. Blank, everybody. I'm purposely leaving the name out. The person in question is very retaliatory by nature. This one's mine, so I'll just go ahead and fill in the blanks. He announced my diabetes on a Zoom call with 200 people. Said, you know, we all need to watch out. We even have diabetics going to the ice with us this year. And I was the only one there with that condition. The NSF has confirmed that I was in fact the only diabetic applying to go that year. Raging alcoholics passed the psych test. Raging ragers too, but the nicest people I've ever known are MPQ'd and not told why. HIPAA violations galore. This one didn't come from an applicant. This actually came from a doctor working in the program who, and I quote, was disgusted with the National Science Foundation. There are good people in these programs. I don't want to paint this as an entire bucket full of bad apples. There are good people, but the good people are not making the chief decisions. He CC'd people from the NSF while making these threats. I want to make clear, this is not a single rogue contractor that's kind of an asshole. Like, this is systemic. He's backed up by the organization. He's protected. He fed stereotypes to the health and safety team. They believed him. They rejected my appeal. I had no say at all. It was the worst day of my life. I want to make clear, these quotes, a majority of these quotes come from people who do not look like me on one axis or another. Bit of a call for action. I'm sorry, I'm running short on time. I'll try and be quick. Transparency. We need to publish stats on who's passing and who's failing the PQ program by race, ethnicity, gender, disability status. I want to know, is this an equitable program, or is this been a barrier to diversity? Publish the medical guidelines. They keep those hidden. They're not classified, but you can't go on the website anywhere and download them. Lucky for you, I FOIA'd it. You can have them right here if you want them. I'm going to leave this up the rest of the talk. Applicants need a voice. There's nowhere on the forums that lets you actually say what went wrong. Yeah, just a second. I'll be done in a second. Applicants must have a say in their PQ and appeal decisions. People with disabilities are the foremost experts about their disabilities. This is acknowledged in the Reconciliation Act of 1973 and the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. The Equal Employment Opportunity Office in the US recognizes this explicitly. The National Institutes of Health acknowledge this explicitly, that if someone is living with a chronic illness, they know better than anyone what they can and can't do. This is not recognized in the NSF's PQ program. They do not give you a voice at all. Field team members must be free to openly talk about medical issues in the field without fear of an immediate PQ. People make these calculus decisions about, I've been having a stomach ache for 5 days straight. Do I tell someone? And the reason they're making that calculus is because they know, for any arbitrary reason, they could get yanked off the ice and sent back home and PQ'd and not be even a chance to see what's going on. So they debate with themselves, and I've heard this again and again, whether or not to say anything. I've talked with PIs who make policies in their own team saying, all right, you are free to speak up in this team. We're not going to immediately report you to the health and safety program because we need people to be able to speak up about what's going on. It's a safety issue. The program is very adversarial as it acts right now. And that's not healthy. And the third is accountability. There's got to be independent external reporting mechanisms for the abuse. In the large sexual harassment report that's recently come out, they're starting this. It definitely falls under the necessary but insufficient category. But that needs to apply to this program as well, to PQ applicants. Have a medical ethics review from time to time. Review those complaints. Is this right? And stop protecting serial abusers. There's been at least 3 times I have spoken about either what happened to me or these issues more broadly with folks that sing the praises of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. Don't forget that one. and have NSF.gov emails. In every single case, what's happened is the first thing they say is, oh my God, this is horrible. This shouldn't happen. And then the next message I get is, but I don't do the health and safety team. You need to go talk to the health and safety folks. I'll forward you on to them. Go talk with them. And as soon as they're the only ones in the conversation, it gets buried and dropped. Don't pass the buck. Like if you're here and you care about this and you've got an NSF.gov email, please do something. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mike, for sharing that with us.